Hi, my name's Cole Hastings, and I'm 25 years old. And this is me at age 20, the age where I was the most jealous I had ever been in my entire life. I started off like most young children, not really giving a crap about what other people had that I didn't have, and portraying high confidence because my brain was the size of my fist. The biggest problem I was faced with at that time was my parents forcing me to learn how to wipe my own ass. Then I got to elementary school, and I started to become exposed to the competitive nature of humans. Grades existed, winners and losers existed, cliques formed. It was no longer, oh yeah, we're all friends and happy, cool time, we play on playground, yeah. It was, hey, if we don't like you for no good reason, we're gonna ostracize you and make you feel worthless. I never dealt with getting bullied during this time, but seeing that shaped my perception of what it meant to succeed or fail. By middle school, it was the same deal, except by then, we were all a little more developed as humans and everybody knew how to have some form of manners. So instead of being blunt and honest about the fact that you don't want to be friends with someone because they don't share the same skills, confidence, attractiveness, or status as you'd make up excuses like, oh, sorry, our lunch table's full right now, or sorry, we just don't have the same interests. But of course, there were outliers to this who literally just told you straight up what they thought was wrong with you. You probably know what I'm talking about. Those guys or girls that were really just toxic and thought they were above everybody else, even though they were a pampered princess their entire lives and had a Range Rover and grew up in a $500,000 house.
Hey man, that sounds oddly specific. Are you projecting?
No! Anyways, when I first got to middle school, I had transferred to a new school where I didn't know anybody. On the first day of school during lunchtime, I got my food and looked around at the potential tables I could sit at. I could just tell right away who the popular kids were because they were all decently attractive, sociable, and they clearly all knew each other from the school they previously went to. I wasn't jealous of them, but I was too scared to approach. And I mean, can you blame me? Look at the way I looked back then. But luckily, there was another table that was much more welcoming, the gamer nerds. And so I solidified myself in this clique for all of 5th grade, until I started to get jealous. Jealous of those popular kids. Why did they seem so much happier than me? And smarter? And why were the girls in the group so fond of the guys in that group? What was it that I was lacking that they had? After struggling to answer these questions for 2 years, I was now in 7th grade. Most friend groups had already been established by this time, but for some unexplainable reason, my friend group, the gamer nerds, started to slowly fall apart. And to me, it seemed like the universe was calling upon me to take the first step to make friends with those people that I always wanted to be friends with. So I decided to muster up the courage and get myself to ask them to sit at their table. And to my surprise, they agreed. I don't remember exactly how it went, but I do know by the end of that first quarter of that year, I was fully integrated into the group of people that I used to be jealous of. And we were all really good friends. I thought that by now, I would have figured out why I was so jealous of those people that I looked at from a distance, but after becoming friends with them, I realized that we were very similar people and we had the same sorts of interests. So I kept those questions unanswered and I continued to move on throughout my life. The years went on and eventually I found new things to get jealous about, like people's intelligence and opportunities. At the start of high school, I was a terrible student. I'd often skip homework assignments completely and never study for tests, all while my friends around me were excelling with what looked like absolute ease, at least to me. In biology class, one of my friends and I would sit next to each other, and every time we got a test back, we'd compare our grades. And his was higher every single time. He'd be so nonchalant about it too, like, oh wow, I only got a 91 on this one, damn. I'd feel the blood start rushing to my head, my hands shaking, and the anger deep inside my chest from the amount of jealousy I had for this guy who was just like me, but somehow could do better on tests than me. To me, it just didn't make sense and it wasn't fair. By the end of sophomore year of high school, I realized that it was actually important to take school seriously if I wanted to get into a college. And I slowly started to utilize more of my potential because of it by spending a large amount of hours studying and going to office hours after school. It was then that I understood that my friend who I was so jealous of for getting better grades than me was probably working way harder than me behind the scenes, studying rigorously. But he was just one of those people who was really good at hiding it. Soon after I decided to put in actual work, when we got our tests back in biology, our grades started to become strikingly similar similar. But even though I thought I figured out or conquered this piece of the puzzle to jealousy, the years went on, and I still found things to be jealous over. And by this time, I really wish I would have just stopped trying to figure it out on my own and let myself continue to have these unhealthy mental mannerisms by getting some actual therapy. And that is why I want to tell you guys about a great, affordable online way to get therapy, which is the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. You've probably heard me talk about BetterHelp before. They will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. BetterHelp has now helped over 2 million people live happier, healthier lives, and they have over 20,000 therapists on the platform. If you find your jealousy problems are over-amplified to the point where they are ruining your life and many aspects of your life, then there's some sort of underlying mental condition that needs to be diagnosed by a professional. On BetterHelp, you can start communicating within 48 hours, and the service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account at any time and send a message to your therapist, and you'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video calls, so you'll never have to wait in one of those uncomfortable waiting rooms in real life with traditional therapy. BetterHelp wants to help you better. Haha, nice pun there, Cole. But seriously, they do. So if you need to, you can change your therapist for free at any time. And it is more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. If you want to join the over 2 million people that are improving their relationships with themselves and others, then you can use my link, betterhelp.com/Cole. That is betterhelp.com/Cole. It is in the description. And there's a special offer for listeners of my channel where you can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/Cole. So by this time around, I was the age of 20, and this is when my jealousy peaked. By this point in everyone's lives, we'd all grown into drastically different people with different circumstances. Before, we were all going through the same education system and had the same sort of friends and close to the same sort of opportunities. But by now, everyone kind of evolved into their own person. There were stark differences in colleges everyone got into, how much everyone was making at that point, and the career path that everyone was working towards. And of course, the fact that some people seem to have an easier time acquiring these things irked me, but perhaps what made me the most jealous was my relationship at the time. After my first relationship ended not so spectacularly, I'll just leave it at that, I developed an intense jealousy whenever my girlfriend got attention from another guy or when she was liking some other dude's pics. Yeah, the real petty, pathetic stuff like that. And on top of that, I had nothing that I could really show other people that was going on in my own life. The only thing that I could desperately hold on to was the fact that I was doing decently well in college. And so, after I finally peaked in jealousy and envy for several years, and I inevitably got dumped by my girlfriend because of it, I was finally forced to come face to face with this problem. And now I want to tell you what some of those solutions looked like. The process of introspection started during those early days of jealousy when my brain had not yet fully developed. And I came to find out that the first type of jealousy that I want to go over was the more natural and less harmful type of jealousy that we all feel creeping up within us sometimes. The type that is perfectly normal and healthy so long as you don't let it take over your life. And that is the hardwired forms of competitive jealousy. As humans, we are wired to protect the precious resources related to ourselves that help us survive. What has helped us survive over the past several hundred thousands of years? Having a strong tribe, usually known as friends these days, high attractiveness, strength, and intelligence. So when you interpret that someone else may have a higher amount of one or more of these things, your brain is going to start to tell you, hey, you're at risk of not surviving. Now, is this question still true a couple 100,000 years later? Well, here's the thing. Most of us definitely are not at risk of being attacked by a wild lion or cheetah these days, but having these competitive advantages usually leads to greater perceived successes in life, and we all want to feel like we belong by having these advantages. With that being said, it is not in your benefit, nor is it likely possible for you to get rid of that jealousy entirely, but to instead change your perception on it. When I told myself that this was simply just a primal instinct to threat, and it was not at all rational to perceive this thing as a threat, I learned to accept it for what it was, my lower brain doing lower brain things. And it no longer affected me the way it used to. Other things that added to the remedy of this type of jealousy were empathy, time, and the acceptance of unfairness. Empathy has a special way of pouring out the flames that I found myself so frequently engulfed in when I was younger. It's actually happened more recently than than I'd like to admit. When I first saw that the YouTuber that many of you watch on a daily basis, Hamza, was blowing up out of nowhere and with less effort than I thought I had to put in to get to this point in my YouTube career, those same sort of feelings that I used to feel when my friend in biology class got a better grade than me started to spark once again. Who the hell is this guy to be getting so many views consistently? Why would anyone listen to his advice? Why does he deserve this success? And for a while, I could not shake this mindset until I did the empathy practice. Instead of seeing Hamza as a rival, I saw him as a human being who has gone through the same sort of struggles, stories, and scars as me. And instead of being a hater, I quickly became a fan and encourager. I asked myself, probably one of the most important questions you can ask yourself, is my brain functioning on facts? Is it true that Hamza is a threat to me? And I realized that my brain was just activating my primal competitive nature, and while it is healthy to have some friendly competition, the only way that I could achieve that was to stop being mad and instead see this as an everybody can win mindset. It's clear that this dude put in a massive amount of work to get to this level of success, and his success does not at all take away from mine. If anything, it only adds to my own because he's bringing more eyes to the self-improvement space. We aren't fighting to beat each other and survive. This isn't cavemen times anymore. And so we actually ended up doing a podcast episode together, which can be found on my podcast channel, linked in the description. Along with applying this same sort of mentality and thought process to your current jealousy situation, try this time practice. When you feel yourself getting jealous about something or someone, write down how you're feeling and leave it there. Then, a few hours later, revisit those jealous thoughts you wrote down. What you'll typically find is that the intensity of the jealousy has faded, granting you relief and perspective that the next time you feel jealous, this too shall pass. And lastly, there is the acceptance of the unfair. Yes, I have to tell you this straight up. People started with better advantages than you. Some people do in fact have it easier in life. And the second that I just accepted that and put my nose to the grindstone and just did what I could with the resources that I had and went to work, then I shut up about being so jealous of like, oh, this person started out like at higher up than me and they had more money or more whatever, like it just came easier for them. Doesn't matter. That's the way the world works. The world's unfair. We all spawned in at a different level with different characteristics. Use what you have to the best of your ability and build up your skills. You just gotta accept that. Now we have yet to tackle the harder to identify and solve form of jealousy. The jealousy that initiated my overprotective nature with my ex-girlfriend. And that is the jealousy that stems from your low self-esteem. When you feel like you are not good enough on your own, where you are right now, almost everything and anything will make you jealous, whether you are in a relationship or not. Because you feel like you're at risk of losing the said thing, losing your relationship because you'll never be good enough for that person, or you'll just never reach the point to where other people will validate you and make you realize that you are worthy. Now, the roots of your low self-esteem will look different for everybody, but the process of finding those roots is virtually the same for everybody. First, I had to evaluate what I was consuming on a daily basis, both subconsciously and consciously. While our brains are an amazing machine to filter out the things that it deems to be unimportant to us, there are many things that you consume, both physically and mentally, that are amplifying this jealousy within you. I think the biggest thing for me was social media and comparing myself to what I saw on social media. You know, all these people younger than me have more success than me, or they have more friends than me, or they're more attractive than me. When I was constantly consuming that type of stuff and the things that these people would say about what I should value, which we're going to talk about after this point, it basically programmed my brain to always be in I'm not enough mode. So the first thing that I really had to do was limit my time consuming content on social media that made me feel like shit. You know, every time you consume some sort of content, you should take note of how it makes you feel mentally. And those things that don't make you feel too good mentally and are fueling this jealousy mindset, you need to either limit your time on them or remove them completely. This kind of goes along with the last one, but the next one is to evaluate what you interpret as being valuable. Things like wealth, money, status, friends, relationships, they're all what our primal instinct brain wants, but they can be perceived differently. And you need to look at these things and you truly need to ask yourself, if I had these things, would I really see myself as more valuable now? Or is it just something that our culture just amplifies in us to focus on these materialistic things in order to be perceived as valuable? When you decide to evaluate all those things and write them down and ask yourself if you really wanted them or not, then you realize how irrational it is to be thinking of things that way and realizing it's just a product of our culture. And along with being hyper aware of what you're consuming on a daily basis and how it is fueling this jealousy mindset and evaluating what you interpret to be valuable and why you interpret it that way, look deeply at all these negative forms of self-talk and ask yourself where they came from. Does this stem from your childhood when you were bullied and people told you weren't good enough? Or does it stem from some sort of trust issues from a past relationship, which is what mine stem from, specifically with the relationship jealousy from my first relationship. When all that stuff happened in the first relationship, I felt like I wasn't good enough because of the way I was treated in my first relationship. And so I always had this mindset in my second relationship of like, oh, I must not be good enough as a person. What if she breaks up with me? And so that inward feeling would express itself into my outward reality by getting jealous if she was getting attention from other guys or if people were liking her photos or something like that. And you need to ask yourself, is this thing really true, or am I using irrational forms of comparison? We compare because it's embedded into our primal instincts, like I've talked about, but that doesn't at all make it rational. And practically all the times we compare ourselves to someone else, it is not accurate nor a considerable approach to determining whether we're valuable or not. So really go deep into these things that you're consuming, evaluating, interpreting what you find valuable, and like, why do I interpret these things as valuable, and how can I change my mindset about these things? And then, what am I telling myself on a daily basis about myself? Where does that come from, and how can I transform that through positive self-talk and through positive actions that help fuel the positive self-talk that will eventually reprogram my brain to think, oh yeah, all that jealousy stuff, that doesn't matter because I feel like I'm whole on my own and I know where I'm going, I know where I'm headed, I know what I have to do to get there, so I'm just going to fully dial into myself and just make myself better, while also being content with where I'm at. Thank you very much to all my patrons on this channel on Patreon. If you don't know what this is, it's a platform separate from YouTube where I'm putting out exclusive content you can't find anywhere else. And you can talk to me one-on-one over the phone on there. If you want to check that out, the link is in the description. That is all for this video. If you want to go deeper into this topic of like figuring out who you are and why you talk negatively about yourself, then check out this video about your insecurities being a lie. It will blow your mind. That is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.